to my YouTube channel. My name is Brenda Jeso. For those who are new here, karibuni sana. Guys, I've really missed you. Nimewa-miss kabisa. So today, guys, we are going to start another new segment known as storytelling. In this storytelling, we have a certain book known as Mbatha and Rabeka, which was written by David G. Mailu. Guys, while reading this book, we are going to tackle so many issues. Be my guest, guys. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. I love you so much.
Mbatha and Rabeka. Country-bred Mbatha and Rabeka are childhood sweethearts and seem destined for each other. Illness takes Rabeka to hospital in Nairobi, and while she is recuperating, she meets the sophisticated Mawa. This meeting has dramatic consequences for them all. The author, David G. Mailu, the most widely writer in Kenya, was born in Eastern Kenya in 1939. As a bold and controversial writer, he has won a unique place in East Africa. He writes with frankness and humor, and with a deep insight, the flavor of his society. Beside being a writer, he is a publisher, artist, and a singer. Thank you so much, David G. Mailu. Whenever they heard the sound of Mawa's car, the mothers at Buruburu Estate, an arm estate of the luxuriant city of Nairobi, complained of spasm of pain both in their breast and loins as they waited in horror, expecting to see a child knocked down dead by the car. However, the children had learned through being beaten that when they had that particular car, they should clear off the road immediately. Mawa's car was the only one of its model and sound in the whole estate, a sub. He loved the peculiar cry of the sub's engine, especially the sound of gears, which he changed frequently and rather unreasonably as he rode in and out of the estate. But nobody should tell you how to beat your own drum. Speed was something Mawa loved. Yet, in spite of the anxiety of people, he drove very fast and had an accident-free record in his own 7 years of driving. Still, as Joseph Mbatha had often said, the past was no security for the future. The accident could still come anytime. Many mothers didn't have the guts to face Mawa and warned him about his dangerous driving in the estate. They all feared him for his carefree attitude. He was a dynamic young man who didn't hesitate to shoot an embarrassing question or a dirty word to a woman. He talked boldly and loudly, especially when he was not in a diplomatic or seductive mood. Enter the estate really flying, negotiating the bends with screening tires. His body bent in the direction of the corner, while his cassette player blared out Charlie Pride music. He sang loudly with it, feeling high, dancing as he drove. When the car arrived outside his house, he let out one last blast from the exhaust pipe and then killed the engine. He hopped out and banged the door shut loudly, perhaps to tell his neighbors that he had come home. He cleared out his throat powerfully and spat soundly and arrogantly as he unlocked his front door. He was dressed in a blue suit, a light blue shirt, a dark blue tie and socks, and his feet were sheathed in highly polished shoes. He emptied the contents of his jacket on the table. Having first opened the windows to let some fresh air into the staff, expensively furnished room, he threw his jacket over the sofa, fetched a writing pad, a barrel pen and a foot rule, rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, loosened the knot of his large tie, and put an ashtray on the table beside the pocket of State Express 555 cigarettes, which he loved smoking. Then he lowered himself onto the sofa. He sighed. A stick of cigarette was dancing between his lips. He came to life again, dancing gently to the Pride's L.P., which was still playing in his mind. Out of his wallet, as his shoulders bounced with the rhythm, he extracted a beautiful colored photography, a portrait of a girl, which he added to the other items on the table. The name of the pretty girl in the portrait was Rabeka Malonza. She was a teacher, but today Mao was not going to write a letter. Had she not been with him only a few days ago in his house, and had he not been kissing her at Machakos only the previous afternoon? He drew the writing pad close, lit his cigarette, picked up the barrel and fort rule, sucked a cloud of his 555 into his lungs, letting the chest enlarge with inhalation. Then, as the smoke escaped from his large nostrils, he started rolling lines down the pad. At the top of the paper, he wrote down items. Items, shillings and cents. The items, shillings and cents that were going to follow below had a lot to do with Rabeka Malonza. In fact, everything there had to do with her. Somewhere in the country, far from the city, another man walked out of his house and banged the door behind him so hard and so furiously that the entire house shook and the iron sheet roof rattled. Loose particles of cement dropped onto the concrete while white ants sang from the other end of the old staff house. He nearly broke the door and pulled off the handle. The noise could be heard all over the Kilindini Primary School. Then Joseph Mbatha walked slowly, silently, and dejectedly towards the classroom, like someone who was counting his paces. His head was bent down like the head of a withering flower, or like someone expecting a nosebleed. The steps he made reacted on his head gently, as though he was nodding to some slow tune. His eyes were red with sleeplessness, his lips loose under the heat of his present depression. He walked painfully up the steps as if he was having trouble with his breathing, or his heart, or something else. His left hand clutched a few exercise books and a black notebook to his chest. He entered the classroom slowly and uncertainly, without even being conscious of his pupils. But he heard their movement as they rose to honor him. Still without looking at them, he placed the books on the table hesitatingly. Normally, he would have greeted his pupils happily by the time he had entered the door, but today he didn't. Did he forget to do so, or could it be that, as he seemed to be heavily preoccupied, he thought he had greeted them? The pupils stayed standing, waiting to be greeted and told to sit down. Yet silence prevailed. He had woken up to another bad day. In the words of Europeans, a black day. His pupils were now confused as to whether they should remain standing or should sit down. Puzzled, they watched him silently. Some went back to sit, then one by one, 2, 3. As there didn't seem to be any objection to sitting, it would be better for them all to sit down. So they sat down but remained silent. The teacher had only glanced at the pupils who were aware of the teacher's troubled mind. In fact, they knew a lot about it. But today it began to worry them again, bringing back the old fears. The children wondered, did he forget us because of the same thing? The whole school had talked a great deal about Joseph Mbatha. The teachers and the pupils discussed him, each group on its own, while the small children wondered why something like that should have happened at all to anyone, especially to a teacher. They could not believe what the others were saying, that their teacher had acted like that and cried tears. Among the teachers, there had been a big argument with the majority feeling and expressing the opinion that Joseph Mbatha was a stupid, weak, and extremely emotional man. To try to cover up, the headmaster Solomon Ngundo had tried to stop the children from buzzing about it, but the might of this fire could not be extinguished. A few elders had come forward and suggested that Joseph Mbatha should be removed from school. The psychiatrist, when he heard the report, suggested that Mr. Mbatha should be given another leave to recuperate. Mbatha's best friend Kionda, a shopkeeper, spent much time trying to put courage back into him and to repair his broken spirit. At other times, he ridiculed what he described as Mbatha's idealistic heart. A man should try to be a man, Kionda told him. In the classroom, Joseph Mbatha stood still in front of his pupils, not looking at them, but staring at the opposite wall. Not even looking at or seeing the wall, but looking into the helpless hands that held the heaviness of his sinking life. Or perhaps in those deep thoughts, Joseph Mbatha was not looking at the sinking of his his life, but simply seeing an image of the girl in question. The thoughts, the heartaches, and the compelling feeling of having lost everything in his life had something to do with the girl that the whole school and the whole village had been talking about. Miss Rabeka Malonza. She remained in one position for a long time, her back curved, her lower lip held between her teeth, and her eyes down, nervously alert as she carefully shaved hair. She was afraid of cutting herself with the razor blade, as she had accidentally done on other occasions. The bead shaving instrument she held now had belonged to Joseph Mbatha in those good times. When she heard footsteps